York. You'll see him on your TV, 8 o'clock on Saturday night with Tom Luganbill and Dana Boyle, as he'll be down in Raleigh for Cuse and the Pack. Wes, always good to see you. Last time we talked, it was during the middle of that wacky Olympic opening ceremony, so I don't think I'll have any weird Paris horse things happening during the show this time.
Yes, it was. That's exactly what it was. That was hilarious. Yeah, good to see you, Brian.
It's like 2 months later. I still haven't figured out what was going on with that, and I've tried. I don't have anything.
That's awesome.
It was entertaining. I still don't know what it was, but I'll take entertaining. All right, so we'll get into the game and ACC. Lots of craziness going on at the ACC this year, West. We started the show today because Syracuse Chancellor Kent Syverud has been very front-facing on this with this college football Super League idea that's being kicked around a little bit that would be like 72 teams and who knows what. I don't sense this will ever actually happen because I don't know why all involved would necessarily agree to it. It sounds idealistic and interesting, but what do you make of all of it?
Well, without knowing Dr. Syverud personally, my first question would be, so what does that do to the portal and what does that do to NIL? Have we gotten any governance on that yet? Because we can talk about all this other stuff, Brian. The reality is until we fix the business model, there's still schools whose financial solvency is going to be in question here in the next 5 years.
Yeah, it sounds like from what he and the people involved in this proposal are thinking, and I could be reading this wrong, is that if they have a larger group of schools that is proposing things to Congress, perhaps they're more likely to have Congress pass something than if it's one school or a smaller group. That's my sense of it. Again, who knows? Because somebody's got to make some rules, right, Wes? If there's no rules, you can't do anything.
Look, Mark Emmert basically ought to be in jail. If Mark Emmert worked for a private corporation and did what he did, he'd be in jail, basically, right? Because the people would have found him guilty of fraud or financial whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, so we've gone through this loop now to where we're 4 years into NIL and about 3 years into the money being a driving factor in this. The portal has been a rich translator, if you will, transistor for college athletics. We can talk all about super leagues and everything else, but until we have an overriding governance of what college athletics is going to be, and by the way, last time I checked, that would be at the responsibility of the presidents and chancellors, right? I mean, how's that going to work? So to me, we can get to super leagues. And look, do I think it's possible? Sure, it's possible. I mean, at this point, who are we to dismiss any idea based on what we've seen? I mean, my goodness, Stanford and SMU are at ACC basketball media days today. I mean, Stanford's first ACC game was in your building in Syracuse.
It was.
So, I mean, let's say we've already kind of jumped the bridge here a little bit. Where do we stop? Well, we got to have some semblance of structure and governance, I think. And that's actually been the one thing that I've heard more from the college campuses coming back to me in my travels this fall is that, like, anybody who wants to be on a committee for this or that, you better hope that some committee is creating a new structure for what major college athletics is going to be. And who's in the top level and who's in the middle level, Brian? And then how does FCS shake out and those type things?
Yeah, and you can't shake stuff out until you know where you're shaking.
Correct.
From, I guess would be the main thing.
Yeah.
And it seems like they're all waiting on like Congress or something to figure this out. Like that. Like good luck on that, right? At this point, I don't know how long we'll be waiting on something like that.
Well, that's the reason we kicked the can down the road with the portal with NIL based on states, right? Was because Congress didn't want to touch it. I mean, so again, I'm trying to sort out where this is all going to fall, and to me, it seems like that Division I Board of Governors and folks like that need to get together in the executive committee of the NCAA and say, hey, what are we going to do here? And by the way, why does the NCAA have any say-so in this when it feels like everything that's happening in major college athletics is being driven by the 4 conference commissioners and Jack Swarbrick for the time being, and pretty soon, I guess it'll be somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, the NCAA feels like they've abdicated their decision-making power
That's
on this a long time ago. As we got West Durham with us. The good news here, Wes, is they're at least still playing the games right now. And the games have been, man, it's been a fun month, a wild month of college football.
Yeah.
Well, what are you making of the ACC right now? I mean, Miami is surviving by the hair of their chinny chin chin every week. Right. Florida State's a grease fire, and we got everything in between. What's your read on the league right now?
I think Miami and Clemson are the two best teams in the league, Brian, but I think their teams right behind them that can, factor into this, and I would put Syracuse on that list. I think the Orange is certainly a team that has a schedule that could impact the way the rest of the race falls for sure. But the two you have to be most impressed with here are Miami, certainly from the start. Now, they have dodged bullets here in the last two. There's no question about that. But Clemson, we had our package had Clemson right after they lost to Georgia. And Dabo Sweeney sat in our Friday production meeting and said, guys, I'm telling you, it's not as bad as it looked, and we're a pretty good football team. And sure enough, they blitzkrieged Appalachian that night and really haven't, except for the other night, let up since on offense. And I think their defense is starting to come around as well. It's going to be an interesting October for Clemson. I think it's going to be an even more interesting October for Miami because now the reality of where Miami is in this, obviously it's going to change. The first poll doesn't come out till election night, ironically. But I think it's going to get really interesting to see how the two climates of Clemson and Miami change between now and the first CFP poll.
I think there writ large, Wes, is the stubbornness of college sports. You could have picked another night to put the first poll out on.
Well, and
on something like that.
Think about that, though. We're playing CFP quarterfinal games opposite NFL games.
Right. Yeah, that's going to be, we'll see how wise that is when the ratings come back on that stuff when we get into December. Because we saw that, like the NFL didn't back down on their scheduling. That's for darn sure. They are actively going head-to-head on games like that. So, man, you look at Miami here, and it's always right, like, are the Canes back? Is the U back? Cam Ward is a stunning player to watch. He's done this. How long is this sustainable here? Because the last two, more than easily could have been losses. Is that just, all right, that's what good teams do? They find a way to win this game, or is this going to bite them in the butt at some point?
I do think that has something to do with it, though, right? Every team that's had a great season manages to stay out of the gully, if you will. And I think Miami certainly avoided that the last couple of weeks. No matter how they got there, they got there. For me, I think Cam Ward is one of the major difference makers in their success. I think he is a really good college quarterback. I was a football junkie watching him play at Incarnate Word in an FCS game one time in a semifinal game, I think it was. But no, he's a terrific player. I think they're pretty good on defense, especially kind of up front. And now with Reuben Bain coming back, I think they have a chance to be particularly good from a strength standpoint there. To me, the real question is, how does Miami continue to handle these moments? Because in all honesty, and I think you would agree with this, you're kind of sitting around waiting on, okay, now when have you put yourself in real trouble? Now, maybe they can avoid that. And I think they've got enough maturity in a lot of places to do it. I think they're a better football team, obviously, now than they were a year ago. I think there's a better understanding of coach and player and kind of what they want to do. So for me, Miami is kind of the house favorite. Now, that being said, they're going to play some critical games here. Pitt is an interesting team. You guys have probably seen, in your world, Pitt and Syracuse kind of been tied at the hip a couple different times as you've been through the ACC. To me, Pittsburgh is interesting because it's being done in the antithesis of what we thought Pat Narduzzi's teams were. They are probably taking steps on defense, but they are a proven commodity on offense. And Eli Holstein has had a terrific year. And I think Desmond Reed is kind of finding his spot, and their offensive line has played well. And so far, they've stayed away from some really tough injuries. So we'll see what happens with Pitt. I'm excited about seeing the Orange on Saturday night in Raleigh. NC State is reeling a little bit. It's a different NC State team. We thought they would be kind of in that hunt behind Clemson, Miami, Florida State in the month of July. That has not happened. The quarterback injury situation was frightening on Saturday. I don't think we'll see him this Saturday. I think it'll be the freshman Bailey. But the curious part for me, Brian, is NC State's not been very good on defense. And that was an area that I thought, you know what, even though they lost Peyton Wilson, we all recognize a terrific player. This is not a particularly good defensive football team right now, and I'll be interested to see how they expect to slow down a team that I'm fascinated to watch. Every time I see Syracuse, it's a different guy leading them in receiving. It feels like, what are they, 4-1? They've had 5 different guys lead them in receiving, it feels like. McCord deserves a ton of credit. LaQuint Allen has proven again he's one of the better backs in the league. And he's got some help with him this year, which I think has got to be encouraging for the Orange fans.
Yeah, I believe it's 4 guys right now are top 10 in the league in receptions per game, and McCord is throwing by far more passes than anyone.
63 the other night was a little out of hand, didn't you think?
Yeah, he threw. I was actually more concerned that he threw 50 against Holy Cross. Like that's kind of the way the season's going.
Okay,
he's winging it around.
But here's the thing: I'm sure when we get a chance to visit with Jeff Nixon, it's going to be like they throw to run. I mean, they actually throw routes that are run routes. Just it comes in a different way. They don't turn and hand the football to LaQuint Allen. They get the ball to LaQuint Allen, kind of on a swing pass or something like that. And for me, that's what was fascinating about sitting and watching every snap of the Vegas game the other night was the intricacies in the formations and the packaging that got them to the same play. And they are a really, really fun study to get ready for on Saturday for sure.
Yeah, Jeff Nixon, I think, has called some really nice games so far this year. And you mentioned McCord. He's got a good processing ability pre-snap to get the ball in the right place. To your point, LaQuint had 9 catches last game, and he's the running back. So that tells you a lot. You mentioned NC State, and I spent all offseason saying, Wes, you overanalyze these schedules months in advance. I looked at the schedule. I'm like, the NC State game's the hardest game of the schedule. Like, they're NC State. They brought in McCall. They always have a defense. They're bringing back all these guys, and I've watched them. I'm like, it doesn't look like a Dave Doran team normally looks like. It's very strange, right? Like, they always have an NFL defensive lineman. They always have this. You just assume it, and it's just not the case right now.
It's not, and I think, in all honesty, that's the part that has a lot of us pretty perplexed, to be honest, right? I mean, we don't see a Peyton Wilson. We don't see a James Smith-Williams. Look, I think Aiden White's good enough that he's going to play in the league in the secondary. I think they've got some guys that are pretty talented on that side of the ball. Caden Fordham is a first-year starter. Sean Brown is a guy who I liked last year in the spot role. I would say Davin Van and Travali Price are the 2 guys that probably jump off the page in the defensive front for me. And they've played the right way in the portal. Let's be honest. They've done the right thing in the portal in terms of filling gaps. But somewhere along the way here, Brian, it just hasn't meshed. And, you could say, is it like Florida State? Yeah, no, yes, maybe, no, not really. But I think it's their own situation. And I'm intrigued by the fact they did this a year ago. Remember, they started, I think they were, 2-3, 3-2, somewhere in the first 5. This year, they're 3-3 through the first 6. And then all of a sudden, the switch came on after they lost to Duke. Is beating Syracuse Saturday night flipping the switch? I don't know. I think that's why probably for Syracuse fans and players and folks like us that watch this stuff, I think that's where Saturday night is probably really, really interesting because NC State has found ways to turn the lights on when it looks like the room's gotten as dark as it can be.
Yeah, if they could wait a week to do that this year, that'd be just great for all of us. We're just hoping, Wes. We're just hoping Syracuse can get a punt off this week. That's the main thing because that is.
You don't punt much. So, I mean, but when you do, it's an adventure.
That's the good news.
Yeah.
When they do, it goes the wrong way, which is the real problem here. 3 punts last game, and 2 of them went backwards. It's not what you're looking for, but still won the game. Yep. We got West Durham ACC Network with us. You talk about new teams in the league. Obviously, Cal, man, they almost had their great moment and hosted game day last week. We saw Stanford shock everybody and beat Syracuse in the Dome a few weeks ago. Then I look at this SMU team. I watched them in their opener. I'm like, what were they playing at Nevada? I think this doesn't look very good. Then I watched this Louisville game last week, and I'm like, man, I think I'm watching 2 pretty good teams here. What do you make of SMU in their arrival in the league?
I would say that you probably need to keep an eye on them the rest of the way. They are a little bit more than just the offensive show. They are pretty good on defense. They got playmakers at all 3 levels. I think Rhett Lashley's a terrific coach, and he's got a sneaky good staff, Brian. And they've got weaponry all over the place on offense. And Jennings, Kevin Jennings, think about this. Preston Stone got hurt at the end of last year. He went and quarterbacked the American Championship game in New Orleans against Tulane and beat them, right? And everybody was all hyped up on Tulane. So now you look at Jennings. He doesn't get the job to start the season. Last Saturday, he had 400 yards of total offense against a Louisville team we've been told for a month and a half was ready to kind of be in the mix, right? And for me, Kevin Jennings has kind of been a key turner for him. And I'm going to be really, really interested to see what happens when they come back off this bye. They're going to Stanford, then they go to Duke. Now, here's where the travel thing starts to kick in. Cal goes east this week for the third time this year, Brian. They went Auburn, Florida State, now Pitt, right? So I think it's going to be interesting when SMU starts flying west and then they fly east the next week and so forth. And you realize that, North Texas is not your travel partner anymore or whatever. But I do believe they're built to be a factor in this. And if you look at their schedule, and again, they may not get to Charlotte in the championship game, but they can ruin somebody's chances of getting to Charlotte. And I think that's what we have. We have two teams, maybe a third. I'll throw Pitt in there because they're ranked this week. But the reality of it is somebody's going to ruin somebody's chances to go to Charlotte and thus maybe ruin their chance to get in CFP as well.
Wes, and we can wrap up on this. I look back, essentially the entire time Syracuse has been in this league, that I'd say by this point every year, if not earlier, almost every year, you knew Florida State's winning this league or Clemson's winning the league this year. And it would have taken, an act of God for something else to happen. And, clearly Florida State's not winning the league this year. Clemson might, but how different does it feel to you? You've been around this league a long time. That here we are. We're in October. We're midway through that. There are no answers that we are completely certain about right now.
Well, think about it like this. There is only one school, that has more than 2 conference losses right now. And that one school is Florida State.
Yeah. And they got what, 3, 4? What are they?
They are 1 and 4. Yeah. Yeah. Woo. I mean, but you think about it like that. There are 16 other schools within 2 games in the conference. Now, the overall record speaks to other things, right? But in reality, you've got 16 schools that are 0, 1, or 2 in the loss column. That's a pretty strong statement to the depth of the league. Now, if people want to get into the metrics of non-conference, and David Hale, I think, tweeted the other day about record against top 25, record against non-conference out of top 25 or whatever the case may be. Those numbers tell maybe a different story. But in terms of the race to Charlotte, you like Clemson, you like Miami, you give SMU, Virginia's 2-0 in a league for the first time since I don't know when. Pitt's won their only conference game with a big one on Saturday. That's the thing we were talking about, I think, when you and I visited in August, was the depth the league had potential for. But it's not as pronounced because maybe some of those non-conference games didn't go your way. I think it's probably going to end up costing them a third team in the CFP at the end. But I think they've got a real honest chance to get 2, and obviously we'll have one of the top 4 seeds in one of them.
All right. Well, I know this, Wes. Cuse is 2-0 against the top 25, and no follow-up questions. We don't need to ask any follow-up questions on how that came about, or if they're still ranked, or anything like that. That's okay.
I got you.
That's okay. All right, Wes. Always good to chat. We'll be watching
anytime,
on
Brian.
Saturday.
Thanks for having me. You bet.
See State. All right.